Let's start off with the earlier game, the NFC Championship. Again, a rematch. Earlier this season, the Saints did beat the Rams. It was in New Orleans, so this is an exact rematch, unlike the AFC Championship, which is played at a different venue. Saints won 45-35 in that game. And for a majority of the game, the Saints dominated. They were up by a pretty big score. The Rams, they sort of came back in the game, made it a little interesting at the end, but the Saints were still able to win that game. Another interesting point to that is that this was during that Saints ridiculous streak where they were just punishing everybody. They were just beating everybody by a lot. Their offense was in sync. Their defense was starting to get a little bit better, but has got better since then. That's interesting. The Rams have sort of formed into a different team. They've become more of a power running team. They've been less reliant on the pass. Losing Cooper Kupp, I think, has been a big deal. Adding C.J. Anderson, as Kev will bring up, big deal. So the teams are a little bit different, and I think that's going to be said for both of these games. But how do you guys see it playing out? Who are you picking in this game? Let's start off with Dylan. Who do you like here? Do you like the home team, the Saints, #1 seed, or do you like the upset with the Rams?
I'm going to go with the Saints. I think both of these teams have brought out some really good football as of late, and I really liked both of their games, especially last week. In the divisional round, the Rams, they punished the Cowboys with their run attack, over 230 yards rushing from both Gurley and C.J. Anderson, Kevil's boy. So that's a good start for them. The offense was able to click at certain points in the game, and they were able to finish the game off with a nice drive at the end, nice run by Jared Goff. So the offense looked more in sync in last week's game than they did maybe in the last couple of weeks before the regular season. But that doesn't really matter. It's all about getting it done in the playoffs. So they got the job done last week. They looked nice on both sides of the field. Defensive line was getting a lot of pressure on the Cowboys' offensive line, and they had a very hard time getting past that. So both sides of the ball looked good. The Saints last week, they started off a little rough. They gave up those 2 early touchdowns, but I think the key for them was time of possession. They dominated time of possession after the first quarter, including that 12-minute drive in the third quarter. It was 18 plays long. It was ridiculous. And if you have drives like that in a game, chances are if you put points on the board, you're going to win the game. So they ended up strong past the first quarter. They looked great. Defense played their best game all year. They were able to, once they got through that first hiccup in the first quarter, figure out the problems, slow down Nick Foles, make him throw the passes he didn't want to throw. And it was very close towards the end, but they were able to get the victory. I'm liking what the Saints are doing just a little bit more. I know the Rams put up more points and all that stuff, but I feel like playoff Drew's going to come in here because he is 6-0 at home with the Saints in his playoff record. So he knows how to get it done at home, and I think that's where it's going to be a disadvantage for the Rams is that the Saints are playing at home and they don't lose there in the playoffs. So I'm going to take the Saints. My final is going to be 35-31. I think it's going to be a little bit closer of a shootout. Not to the 45-35 level we had earlier in the year because that was crazy. But I still think it's going to be a back-and-forth matchup, and it's going to come down to the last drive, and I think the Saints are going to get it done.
All right, so home field, #1 seed, sticking to the script. Dylan, Kev, are you sticking to the script, or are you going to give this one to Sean McVay? You're on mute.
Sorry, I
usually
think
that's AC who does that, bro. What you're off your game today, Kev.
Off my game a little bit. This is interesting because we really do have 2 different teams that faced each other at that night in New Orleans. And let's look back at those numbers here as I pull them up. Hopefully, both passers were over 350 yards or close. Were over 300. Brandon Cooks had 114. Michael Thomas had 211. It was a really high-scoring game. I actually don't think it's going to be as high-scoring as now. I do think this may be my this may sound ridiculous. I think if it is a higher-scoring game, I actually think it might favor the Rams more than the Saints. I think the Saints have wanted to make a bit of a change. We talked about this a little bit last week, that their offense hasn't been as proficient as it was since it was week 9, but their defense has been #2 since the middle of the season. So it's been a really dominant defense, and they've wanted to run the ball more. I think the other thing that's going to be interesting is what's fascinating about this game is fourth down, because Sean McVay will take risks at fourth down. Sean Payton will take risks at fourth down. The punters may not, and the kickers may just have an opportunity to have a seat and not be a part of this game. And I think that's going to be really interesting. So I think that the Rams need to try to play mistake-free football, which they did last week. They found a way with Jared Goff to win. His stats were not awesome. He found a way to get all of his receivers involved. They were able to run the ball. It's going to be tougher to run the ball this week, even with CJ. To me, what this comes down to is two things, and we'll get into this in the next one. To me, I think in games like this, you have to go with the veteran. And the veteran here is Drew Brees. He has been here before. They won that game to get – the Saints were the team that needed – of all the teams that needed home field advantage other than the Seahawks, the Saints are the team that they have the best home field advantage in the National Football League. You're not playing the Saints, just the Saints. You're playing the Superdome. It's just something completely different. Marcus Peters yapping this week didn't help causes. I do think I've picked the Saints since the beginning of the year. I'm going to have to stick with them. I've been higher on the Saints all year. I think that this is a lower scoring game. I think this is actually going to be closer to what we saw last week, lower scoring. I'm kind of going in the 20 ranges for both teams, but I do think the Saints coming ahead.
All right, so Kevo pulled the Russo swerve there, going with all the Rams stats and the Rams everything, and then he's like, no, the Saints because of Drew Brees. I would like to say, as a Patriots fan, kind of hurt me there. You said the Saints have the best home field when the Patriots were 8-0 at home, but
there's something different about the Superdome than there is
anywhere.
There is,
but I mean, the only undefeated team at home this year was the Patriots. Kevo, thanks for your pick. AC, are you going to stick with the trend, or are you going to go with the Saints as well here?
You know what? I'm going to have, everything that I've looked at, the Saints should win. I don't really trust Jared Goff because we've seen, I think the Saints are going to be able to stop the run, and I don't think he has the type of game to be clutch, and I think you're going to have to be. I do see it maybe playing out very similar to the Eagles game. I think Kevo was saying, I think this could be actually a bit low scoring. I think if you look at Aaron Donald, Fletcher Cox was injured and was being dominant. It looked like they had problems with that left guard, Pete, on the inside of their offensive line. That's going to hurt them to be able to run the ball, which, I think the Eagles did a really good job of actually stopping the run besides a couple big ones that were, I think there was 3 runs that were like 80 or 90 of the yards. I think the Rams are going to be able to do that. If Talib's healthy, now you're looking at a secondary that's better than the Eagles. Sure, Drew Brees is going to make his throw, and I still think they are going to win. The main reason why I'm taking the Rams is because –
You're taking the Rams.
I'm taking the Rams. Oh, I'm taking the Rams, even though the Saints should win.
You just said the Saints are going to win, but then you picked –
No, because this is the reason why I can't take the Saints is for some reason there was this weird rivalry that the Eagles didn't know about, that the Saints, when they won that game, they acted like they won the Super Bowl. And I thought that was a little bizarre, especially when you're a team that you want to make it to the Super Bowl, you want to win the Super Bowl. Just because you beat the Eagles, who weren't good, you celebrated with the ski mask. You celebrated with our win song. Get your own thing. I don't get why. And the Eagles there was no issues with Eagles Saints. We haven't even played them. We played them, whatever. But it wasn't like they just.
The only thing I remember about that rivalry, it wasn't even started by the Eagles. It was the fact that Kamara in the offseason said that if they would have played, they would have beat you guys.
For sure, but then no one really said anything back.
Yeah.
I just think they celebrated a very bizarre way where it seemed like it was more about beating the Eagles than advancing to the NFC Championship. So for that reason, I'm taking the Rams, even though I do think the Saints are going to win. But the Rams.
Okay. So for me,
who are you picking?
I think the Saints are going to win, but I'm picking the Rams.
Okay.
I'll be rooting for the Rams.
Okay.
All right.
I'll say that then.
The New Orleans Saints. So, okay, wait.
So I'm
What's
definitely
your official
either
pick?
way. No, my official pick is the Rams, and I'll be cheering
Okay.
for the Rams. But
that-
I think there's a better chance that the Saints will win.
Okay, I just had to straighten that up. All right.
What's the guy, Doctor Strange? You see like a million different things.
A million different scenarios. So you're saying that there's more scenarios where the Saints win, but you're
Yes.
going with the one scenario where they defeat Thanos.
For sure, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, I understand you now. You just had to put it into Marvel terms for my brain to understand.
Exactly. There we go.
Okay, the New Orleans Saints, the LA Rams. Of course, I do my previews like I've done all playoffs. I think a lot of this game is about how the game starts. And I think both of these games are about... Sorry?
AC dropped the mic and laughed.
Oh, bye, AC. So I think a lot of this game is about how the game starts. If the game starts with the LA Rams with the ball, running the ball effectively, going down, scoring, getting the lead, the Rams have a significantly higher chance of winning this game. If the Saints come out and like the last game they played the Rams, first drive go out and score a touchdown, I think that, again, the Saints have a significant chance to win this game. So I think within the first 5 to 10 minutes, the game will be dictated on who has the lead early in the first quarter. Because I think for the Rams to win, they want to establish that running game. The Saints, they want to hop out in front, get their crowd into it, get that third down defense, rushing the passer, getting after it. They want to force the ball into Jared Goff's hands. This Saints defense only allowing 14 points per game over the last half of the season. So it's been really impressive from that standpoint. And they've been really, really locked down over the last half of the season. But when you're looking at the Rams, again, they want to run the ball. They're averaging 40 rushing attempts over the last 3 games. 40 rushing attempts. That's pretty ridiculous. So they've basically said we want to ground and pound the football. The fascinating part of this matchup is how will the Saints run defense look without Sheldon Rankins, because he got injured in that game against the Eagles. He is a big, big part of that run defense. They do have, some decent depth behind him, but we'll see how it looks. The Saints coming in this game first in yards per carry against as a defense, 3.3 at home. So they've been very good at stopping the run. But again, who starts this game off hot? Because teams have only ran the ball 33% of the time against the Saints because they're usually behind. So when the Saints are in front, it's more predictably a pass, and when it's a running situation, they're able to kind of clamp down on that. The Saints defense, though, has also been really good at defending the pass lately, under 250 yards passing in 7 of the last 9 games. And I think if Jared Goff does have to throw the ball 40-plus times like he did in the first game, I don't think they're going to win, especially without Cooper Kupp in this game. He had 89 yards. He had a touchdown in the first game. I do think where the Rams can take advantage of the Saints secondary is pretty much where Lattimore is not covering. I think Lattimore is going to be covering Cooks. Eli Apple's been pretty good. You got to give him credit. But if they put Robert Woods in the slot a lot, I think that's the real key place that they can take advantage of, because the Saints aren't very good at defending slot receivers. So probably I would suspect that Lattimore will cover Cooks a majority of the time, and Robert Woods will probably have a bigger day, but that's just my guess. When you look at the other side of the football, I think it's all about Kamara. It's all about Thomas. They both had huge games in the first game, and Michael Thomas had over 200 yards. And a lot of that was when the Rams defense was more a man-to-man defense, and they covered Marcus Peters with Michael Thomas all game, and it just wasn't working. Like, Thomas just owned him all day. Talib didn't play in that game, so Talib will be in this game. I think that's a big difference maker, but the Rams have become more of a zone defense lately. The Rams do allow just 20 points per game on the road, but they've played a lot of weak teams. They've played like the Broncos, the 49ers, the Lions, the Cardinals on the road. So that kind of inflates their road defense a little bit. For me, on the Saints side of the ball, if Michael Thomas isn't, going off, I still think he'll have a good game. But if he's not going off, who's that second receiver to step up? Is it Ted Ginn? Is it Smith? Is it Kirkwood? Last game against the Eagles, nobody really stepped up. I know Kirkwood had a touchdown, but Ginn didn't really do anything. Smith didn't really do anything. They need one of those guys to step up. And also, they could get one of their tight ends to step up, because, as we talked about before, the Rams' covering tight ends aren't isn't very good. So I think it's a compelling matchup on both sides of the ball. I do think, like you guys have been saying, it's going to be lower scoring than the first game because I just don't see all the advantages that the teams had on offense the first time coming into the second game. I just don't see it like as much in terms of a matchup standpoint. But it comes down to three things for me. Breeze versus Goff in the last 5 minutes of the game. I'm taking Breeze. Who has the better defense? Consistently, it's been New Orleans. And who's at home? It's New Orleans. So when looking at those three factors to narrow it down, I think the Rams do have a good shot of winning the game, but I think the Saints will win it because of those three reasons. I got the Saints winning 30-24. Do you guys have scores? Just out of curiosity.
35-31.
35-31. Kevel?
Yeah, I'm at more 28-21.
All right. AC?
Yeah, I'll go 27-21.